Okay, so next we would like to introduce our second special guest, Chloe Dalton. Chloe Dalton is a professional rugby union player, a basketballer, an AFLW player, and currently playing for the GWS Giants. She represented Australia in Rugby Sevens and won a gold medal as a member of the women's team at the 2016 Summer Olympics. Chloe is also a qualified physiotherapist, the author of the book Girls Don't Play Sport, as well as the founder of the Female Athlete Project. It's a good time to get your phone out and give her a follow. A movement championing females in sport and sharing their stories. We'd like to welcome Steve and Chloe back up for our second panel.
Thanks, Caitlin. It gives me great pleasure to also be up here with Chloe. I first met Chloe, I obviously knew of Chloe because I'd heard about her in a very sporting pursuit. I was fortunate, I was just talking to Chloe a little while ago, we both got asked to speak at a Western Sydney Sportsman's Night, I think it was, in Maryland's RSL, which was quite interesting to say the least. Some other AFL, there were some AFL people there, Brendan Favola, who's next level win. And we had a good night, and I got to meet Chloe that night. It was it was really good. I felt, to be honest with you, and I'll say it again here, I felt quite out of my depth when I was sitting up on stage with Chloe, given what Chloe has achieved in her relatively young life compared to me, and what she's doing in the sporting arena. So if you could just join me in welcoming Chloe. So Chloe, as was just read out in her bio, Chloe Dalton OAM, Order of Australia Medal, outstanding. I could only dream of that. I think most of us in the room could only dream of that. So you played WNBL. Who for, how long for, and when?
Hello everyone, it's really nice to be here and thanks for that intro, Steve. So I grew up playing basketball. I grew up in the Northern Beaches in Sydney, and so I was playing with the Flames when I was about 19 years old. So it was back in 2012, and I was at Sydney Uni at the time. So I was studying physiotherapy, and I moved out into a share house in Glebe with a couple of friends I made through basketball at uni games, and lived with Ellie Manu, who was also playing at the Flames at that point in time. And it was an interesting experience. I was there for 2 seasons with the Flames, and in that time probably got about 2 minutes of court time, I reckon. I spent a lot of time warming the bench, waving my towel around, giving out high fives and not contributing a lot else. But I think I actually was just, prior to this, I was just at a Sydney Uni event speaking on a panel about my experience at the uni. And I think the coolest thing that I took away from my time at the Flames was, because I was such a kid, I was 18, 19 years old, thinking I probably knew how everything worked at that age, but not understanding that I was learning so much from these really experienced players. And there was probably a mix of players. Some were super serious and had been playing for a really long period of time, and they kind of did everything in the most perfect way and kind of filled that box of being like the perfect elite athlete. And then there are a couple of others, probably more Ellie Manu's end of the spectrum, that worked really, really hard, but also kind of knew what they needed to do to perform as an athlete. And I think it was a cool experience for me as a young person entering into my professional sporting career to understand that not everyone has to fit in this very narrow box to be the very best at what they do. I think it's really cool over time, no matter what you're doing, to understand that you actually have to work out what it is that you're good at and what you actually enjoy doing so that you can thrive in that high performance environment.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I like how you describe that, because it's working out what you're good at and how to be good at it and how to be your best at it is a real challenge for some people. So you're in WNBL, and then you decided to swap sports. Was that a moment where you thought, well, I want to be good at something else?
So I was 7 when I watched Kathy Freeman win gold at Sydney 2000, and that whole Olympics, my auntie was down. Mum and Dad were at the games doing some corporate stuff, but my auntie flew down to take me and my brothers to the Olympics, and so I had the full face paint on, dressed up, and we went to every possible event. We didn't get tickets for that night for Kathy, but we watched it from home on the TV, and I just was mind blown as a little kid by her ability to just walk out onto that track and zip up that custom-made Nike bodysuit and pull her foot over her head and just run with the weight of a nation on her shoulders. And so I decided as a 7-year-old kid that I wanted to win my very own Olympic gold medal. And so I think the harsh reality when I got to the Flames, the end goal was the Opals, and I'd idolise Penny Taylor and Laurie Jackson and Erin Phillips, these players that I'd watched as a teenager who were just absolutely killing it for the Opals, and I wanted to be like them. So then when I got to the Flames, and it was a bit of a reality check that I wasn't at that level, I wasn't even getting minutes at the level below the Opals, so I was a really long way off that dream. And it was kind of a mix of having to be realistic, because I think in sport it's so often celebrated the longevity of people's career, and that's what I admired about so many of these athletes. But I think there's also a time sometimes when things aren't working, that it's okay to try something a little bit different or seek out something new. And so I went home one night after a Flames training where I just was shooting threes and just was not really hitting anything. I had a bad night of training, I wasn't enjoying it, and I typed into Google list of Olympic sports. And I had a look at a few different options. I was not bad at cross country or on bicycle, but I hated swimming, so I crossed triathlon off the list. I looked at taekwondo, but I thought I was a bit late in life to start martial arts. And then I saw that Rugby Sevens was going to be in the Olympics in Rio in 2016 for the very first time. And I'd grown up in a rugby family, so my dad played rugby, both my brothers played rugby. And I would go down to my local footy field on a Saturday afternoon every weekend to watch my brothers. And I'd wait for the clock to count down to hit half time so I could take out a dodgy footy and find a cone to kick the ball over the posts from the sideline, and I actually wasn't half bad at kicking. And so I'd have these grown men come up to me and say, "You should play rugby." And I would turn to them as an 8-9-year-old kid and I'd say, "Girls don't play rugby." And in fact they did. There were some incredible women who were representing our country at that point in time, but I never saw them because they were out of the back oval, without a change room, wearing oversized uniform that didn't even fit them, and I never read about them in the newspaper or saw them on TV or heard about them on the radio. And so to fast forward to when I was 20 years old in 2013, to do that Google search and see that women were going to be playing rugby at what I think is the pinnacle of sport at the Olympics in front of the world, to me just blew my mind. And so I gave myself about 3 years to try and learn the game, to then get to the point of cracking the Australian team to get on the plane to head over to Rio.
So you've never played, you looked it up on Google, and then you down the park kicking a few balls around. You got told by a couple of old guys that you'd be pretty good at it, and then you joined the club and started playing locally. And then 3 years later, you're representing Australia at the Olympics. Unbelievable. That deserves a round of applause, surely. So talk about the transition from playing club rugby locally in Sydney, I presume Sydney, to then getting to that point where you got selected for the Olympics. How did you feel when you got selected? Talk about that experience.
Yeah, so my first experience with club rugby was they took us down to the beach, down at Narrabeen Beach, and they taught us how to tackle on the sand because it's a nicer landing. It's a little bit softer when you don't really know what you're doing. And so when you learn how to tackle, a lot of the time they do it with kids and with people who haven't done it before. You just get down on one knee and you kind of practice the technique of wrapping someone's legs up and taking them to ground, and it's just quite a safe way to learn. So we did that on the beach, and then I got out in the backyard with both of my brothers, who were pretty big boys. They're probably around 6'3", 6'4", over 100 kilos each at that point in time. I found every piece of protective equipment I could find, put a headgear, shoulder pads, mouth guard on, and I got down on a knee and I just literally said to them, "Run at me." And they did over and over again. I could barely move my neck for about a week, but I learned the right technique of how to tackle, which is obviously, as you know, a very, very important part of the game. And I kind of thought if I could tackle these boys, there won't be too many women on the World Series that I wouldn't be able to tackle. And I started playing with that club and I actually started playing 15-a-side rugby just to kind of learn the fundamentals of the game. So for people that haven't watched Rugby Sevens before, it's a horrible game to play because it's on a full-size field but with half the people. The halves last for 7 minutes, which seems really fast when you're watching, but when you're out there, it's exhausting. The training is incredibly intense because it's all about kind of that lactate threshold where you feel like you're constantly on the verge of wanting to vomit. So it's a really fun game to play if anyone's interested. And so I kind of played a season of 15s and I knew that I wanted to get into the sevens pathway, and I was able to make the New South Wales team after I'd been playing the game for a few months and trained really hard with that team and actually was selected to go to Nationals. It was in Canberra, I think it would have been in 2013. And I remember at Nationals, I was playing for New South Wales and a couple of the very best players in Australia and also in the world, in Charlotte Caslick and Emily Cherry, were both playing for Queensland. And my coach put me out on the wing because you can kind of hide a little bit out there if you don't really know what you're doing. I was still learning. And these girls, Charlotte Caslick and Emily Cherry, just ran absolute circles around me. And I just remember this long drive home from Canberra with Dad in the car. And I just was kind of like, maybe that was a ridiculous idea, throwing that basketball dream away. Like, what am I doing here? And I got home and a day or two later, I actually got a call from the head coach of the Australian team, who'd obviously seen something in me, seen some potential in me. And he actually invited me to come to one of the training camps where the development squad for Australia were going to play against Japan. And so I went down to that training camp and we played a series against Japan, and not too long after that I was actually invited to train full-time with the main Australian squad. And it was an incredible opportunity because it was my first time to actually be a proper full-time athlete. And so through funding through the Australian Olympic Committee and the AIS, it was actually a full-time program since Rugby Australia knew that it was going to become an Olympic sport. And so it was just this incredible shift. I was still studying physio at the time at the uni, but the idea of being able to wake up and everything that you did was all about putting your energy into being the best athlete and the best performer you could be was so different to the experience that I had when I was at the Flames, where I was working in the gym doing the 5 a.m. shift multiple days a week before I'd go to training and then go to bed and wake up at 6 in the morning to fall asleep in my university lecture. Because that was, and still is unfortunately, the reality of many part-time female athletes. So to be in a full-time environment in a national program is a huge step in the right direction.
So then you get picked for Australia and you go into the Olympics. Well, that's all right. That's all right. I'm a referee. I've got a memory like a steel trap. So you go to Rio. That must have been an absolute buzz. When you think about in the context, I was just listening to you talk about when you watched Kathy Freeman, in the year 2000, and now you all of a sudden got that uniform on.
Yeah, the day I found out that I was selected in the team was the coolest thing ever. You get this oversized boarding pass printed out from Qantas that it's kind of your ticket. It doesn't work. I wanted to try to scan it to get on the plane, but it's just kind of like a novelty check that doesn't really work. But that was a really special day to be announced to the team, to get my official Australian Olympic team blazer, and just to kind of have that moment of like, it's one step closer to that dream. And getting on the plane, heading over to the Olympic Village was a really interesting experience. There was a lot of discussion in the media at the time around the standards in the village. There was kind of rumours around a lot of the contractors hadn't been paid and they were like pouring things down the plumbing, like down the pipes, and it was just going to be horrendous by the time we got there. So the village wasn't ready by the time we flew in, so we actually went down for a training camp down the coast and kind of had a week to prepare. And we just created this bubble. The coach put a lot of emphasis on this pressure that we had from the outside world. We wanted to make sure that we kept that bubble. We were world champions that season, so we won the World Series of the 2015-2016 series. So we actually went in to the games as favourites for the Olympic gold medal, and Australia hadn't won a gold medal in team sports since 2004 in the men's hockey and 2000 in the women's water polo. And so for us, we felt that pressure. We also made a real decision to embrace it, because for us, we wanted to go. We were really united in this idea of all going. We were going to the Olympics to win a gold medal and nothing else. We didn't want to go and maybe win a silver or bronze. We wanted to go and win that gold medal. And so we then got back into the village to prepare for the games, and we actually were on day one of competition. So we didn't get to go to the opening ceremony, which is a little bit disappointing, because that was another thing that you watch as a kid, and the opening ceremony, everyone walking out of their countries was something that was really cool. But it was a performance decision that you're on your feet for 4 or 5 hours, and we were playing the next day. And going through our pool games, we won the first 2 games, and then we drew with the USA into our quarterfinal. We won our quarterfinal, won our semi-final, and there was this moment, and there's actually a photo of it, which is so cool, and it's me and 2 of my teammates like hugging and also like looking at each other, being like, no matter what happens now, we're coming home with a medal. And we were into that gold medal match against New Zealand, who are our biggest rivals in rugby, and I played every minute of the game, but I don't remember a single second of it because the adrenaline was so overwhelming. But when the final siren sounded, we won 24-17, and I will never ever forget the moment of, every time I tell it, I always get emotional, no matter how many times I tell the story. I stood arm in arm with my teammates, and in the stands of all my favourite people in the world, there was mum and dad, my brothers, my auntie and uncle, my cousins, some of my closest friends had travelled across, and they lifted us up into the stands. My brothers had had about 1,000 beers by that point in time, and it was just so cool to be able to celebrate that moment, not only with my teammates, but with these people who had supported me throughout my entire journey. And there's this really cool photo of when I was 11 years old at cross-country championships in Canberra, and it's the exact same people who were there 13 years later at Rio in 2016 who travelled across. And I think for me it was just, I think a cool moment to be able to say thank you to them for actually believing in me and backing me in for this crazy idea that I had of thinking that I could win a gold medal in a sport that I'd never played before. But also recognising that what you do and the way that you guys all contribute is about so much more than actually just stepping out onto the court or stepping out onto the field. There's actually so many people that ride that journey as well, and sports are powerful things that can bring people heartache, and it can also bring people a lot of joy, and it was really special to have that moment of joy with them.
It's an unbelievable story, and I've heard this before, and it's really powerful. I just want to go back a touch. So you're driving home from Canberra that day, and Charlotte Caslick has run around you. And for those that don't know, Charlotte Caslick is probably, if she's not the best female rugby sevens player in Australia, she's on the podium. She's a bloody good player, if I can use that term. So she's run rings around you, and you're feeling like, well, I'm not very good. What am I doing? And there wasn't that long later, you're playing with her at the Olympics, win a gold medal in Rio, and your family in the grandstand. The feeling of, that must have given you, when you think not long before you thought, well, I'm not that good at this. It must be, it's inspirational to others. It must have given you such tremendous self-satisfaction.
Yeah, it was a really interesting journey, I think, because kind of throughout high school and as I was playing with the Flames, I started to realise that I actually, and it's probably only reflecting now when I did it, that I actually had so much anxiety when I was playing basketball. And I think part of it was like, if you think about the size of the ball and the size of the hoop, there's not that much room for error, right? So you've got to be on the money all the time. Then I went to rugby, and if you throw a pass that maybe floats a metre further from where you intended it to go, your teammate can still run onto that ball. And I actually found it really liberating in a sense, but I don't think I realised the level of anxiety that I actually had when I was playing basketball. I remember just rocking up to Flames training, and we'd do this drill with Chloe Dalton where it's pretty you have to make 20 laps on your right, then 20 on your left, then 20 power laps on the right, and then it was 20 shots in a row from the block on either side. And the level of anxiety and fear that I would have in these drills meant that I didn't ever really feel like I could thrive as an athlete in those environments. And it's over time and working with sports sites and things like that I've started to, I'm in a position that I actually enjoy what I do and I love my sport. But I think I've kind of learned from those moments of it's not worth being in a state of such anxiety when you're doing something like that, and it's trying to work out what are the strategies that I can implement. And so it's like when I have people running circles around me, it's kind of like I actually have to give myself some grace and actually be kind to myself that I'm brand new in this sport and I'm competing against, at the time, she was named the best player in the world. And so there's a level of kindness that you have to give yourself in those situations when you might be new or you might be a little bit out of your depth, rather than just like getting into yourself about how many things you could have done better. It's actually like, you know what, I'm actually here to learn and here to get better, and I know I have a vision of where I want to be, but it's actually okay that I'm not there yet.
Yeah, it's a good point. It is okay to not be there. It's about, as we had with Cara Lee, it's about the resilience of being able to keep pushing through and be the best you can be. Interesting when you talk about the margins for error with the basketball and the hoop and then throwing the ball in rugby. Is that what took you to AFL? Because you can kick that damn thing anywhere and hope that someone catches it. So when you finish, you come back from rugby, you come back from the Olympics. Then how long was it after that before you decided to make another sporting career change?
So came back from Rio, and it was, I think coming back was very much an anticlimax in a way. I think for us, nothing will ever take away the fact that we have an Olympic gold medal, and sometimes I look at it, I should have brought it today, but sometimes I look at it and it's crazy to think that I have my very own gold medal to hold, that I get to have one just like Kathy Freeman has one, like it's pretty crazy. But I think like it's, now I just got, can you ask me that again? Because now my brain just went through.
Look, it's okay. You've had a big day. You've already spoken to the union this morning. No, so what you get back from Rio, and then you come to, we all know Chloe's gone to AFLW, which to me, when I first heard about this, I went, that is such a difference. Going basketball, rugby, AFLW. Why? Okay, back on track. I watched AFLW on TV in the first couple of seasons, and I loved this idea. They did a really good job, I thought, the AFL, at this storytelling piece about, there were so many women for so long who'd been playing footy but had never been allowed to play at the top level. And so there were these incredible pioneers that had pushed for years and years for women to be given an opportunity. And there were now this next generation of young women who actually had the chance to do it. And so I loved what the sport stood for and what the league stood for. And then I also thought, I had no idea, I didn't even know the rules of the game. Because I grew up in Sydney, it's not huge in Sydney, right? So I thought if I put rugby and basketball skills together, then maybe I could make an okay footy player. And so I got flown down by Carlton to come and have a kick of the footy. Got picked up by the fancy list manager in his limousine. I think it was part of the process of trying to impress you with all the big shiny things. Taken to the club, had a kick of the footy, and they said, we definitely think you've got potential. We've watched some of your Rugby Sevens footage. Move down to Melbourne, come and find a job, and if everything goes well, then we'll draft you as an alternative sport rookie. And so I did. I found a physio job down there, moved down there, kind of moved my whole life. And then I'd been there for about 2 weeks. And I opened the newspaper one day, and the list manager, the guy who picked me up in the fancy limo, had actually quit the club. And I was like, oh, I've just moved my whole life here, and now I have absolutely no guarantee of even getting an opportunity. But luckily the club knew that I was on the radar, and they stayed true to their word. And in 2019, I played my first season of AFLW after playing a season of VFLW, so 1 tier down, and ran around like a bit of a headless chook, I reckon, for a number of games while I was still
still learning this brand new game. But I think what the difference with AFLW compared to when I learned rugby was rugby, I knew the game. I'd watched it for years and years as a kid, so I had this inherent understanding of the strategy involved, but I just had to learn the physical skills. Whereas when I learned AFLW, I had to learn the rules and how to handball, which is the weirdest thing to do, but no one could really tell me like the strategy of the game. I'd kind of be like, I feel like I'm in the wrong spot, but I don't really know where I should be. And they'd be like, you just got to read it, you just got to get a feel for it. And I'm like, I can't feel anything. I don't even know how this game works. So it was I think a good lesson in, there was a real sense of liberation that came with doing something completely new again, because we kind of came back from Rio and we continued to perform, but there was a huge amount of pressure on us. And so for me, it was scary again, putting myself in this environment where I could absolutely suck at it and never make anything of it. But I think when I've made these decisions to change and do something new, I've always wanted to be really teachable and find the person who was the very best at what they did and just ask them questions. And I think it's really cool to be able to put your hand up and be okay with not being the best at everything and taking the opportunity to learn from people who are the best at what they do.
Absolutely. So you listed for Carlton.
Yeah.
Played how many seasons with Carlton? 2 seasons. Was your experience when going back to the Charlotte Caslick moment, when you were questioning what you were doing, did what you learned out of that experience help you through those early days in AFL to make you, the player that you became?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I always had this feeling, particularly when I played AFLW, because when I started playing and the commentators would always be like, the cross-coder, the Rugby Sevens player, like that was always attached to my identity, and so I felt like this unspoken thing of trying to mostly prove to my teammates that I could crack it in that sport and I could actually become a footy player for the sake of being a footy player. I was never going to be to the level of some of my teammates who grew up playing the sport and can kick off right and left foot and do things just really inherently. But I wanted to prove to them, I guess, that I could play footy and be respected just for footy, not for my career prior to that. But yeah, I do think moments like the Charlotte Caslick moment have definitely reminded me of that, the need for patience in those scenarios, because I kind of back myself in to do these things because I know that I'm so stubborn. Like I hate not being good at things, so I know how stubborn I am. But I think so many of us just like want things to happen quickly all the time, right? Like we want a quick fix, we want we want to be better on demand kind of thing. But I think it's always a good lesson in patience and knowing that if you continue to persevere with it, that in time will come.
Absolutely, and it's a good lesson for all athletes, both male and female, but obviously in the case that we're talking about here with our female officials. So you finished at Carlton, headed back up out of Mexico, up north of the border, back into Sydney, and you're now with GWS. How's that experience been? And what was your season like this year? I know the answer to that question, but I still don't ask you anyway.
I was really hoping you weren't going to ask that one. It's been a really interesting change for me. I've absolutely loved being home in Sydney, and I feel like in terms of off the field stuff, I just feel like it's a really nice season of life. My older brother just had a little girl. I've got an 18-month-old niece, and she's just the best thing ever. Like, I don't know, there's nothing like I love being an auntie because I can hang out with her and then give her away when she's having a tantrum. But just like being back home has been really fulfilling and probably reminded me that, like, again, sport is important and it can drive you to get a lot out of it, but I think the off-field, off-the-court kind of stuff like that's so important to actually give you fulfillment and purpose. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience footy-wise because, as I said earlier, footy's not huge in Sydney, and I think it's been really cool to have the addition of the Sydney Swans into the competition now, and they've got a pretty decent supporter base that they can quite naturally build off, whereas the Giants have been around for a lot less time and it's still a work in progress to crack into the western suburbs. Western Sydney's traditionally pretty rugby league heavy rather than footy, so it's been an experience in when I was at Carlton. There was a huge membership base as there are in Melbourne and some of those other states, just absolute fanatics about footy. So to come to Sydney is definitely a change. We won 2 out of 10 games this season, so let's skip over that and go to the next topic.
Happy to do that. You're a tremendous advocate for females in sport and founder of the Female Athlete Project. So what made you start that, and where do you envisage it heading?
Yeah, so when I was at Rugby Sevens back in 2017, I was asked to be an ambassador for Our Watch, which is an organisation that does a lot of work in the gender equity, in the prevention of domestic violence. And when they first approached me, I didn't know if I was the right person for the role, because I didn't feel like I was equipped with the right information for an issue that is hugely prevalent and really a scary thing in our society, and particularly at the moment. And they said to me, just come and do the training course, then you can see how you feel, you can make a decision, and then we'll go from there. So I said, yeah, sounds good. And when they took me through this training day, there were just a couple of really key takeaways that just, I think, really stood out to me, and I felt like that day kind of changed the course of what I was going to do next. And they talked about, with domestic violence, the underlying driver being this power imbalance that exists and this gender imbalance that exists, and that women are seen as lesser than. But they also talked about the power of sport, particularly in Australian culture, in being able to shape people's attitudes, being able to start conversations, and particularly what they wanted my role to be is actually to use my platform to use the vehicle of sport to change the way that women are perceived more broadly in society. And so I wanted to, I kind of from there had this real passion about the gender equity space, and I wanted to do more about it, but I didn't really know how to address it. And it was during one of the COVID lockdowns in 2020 that I started a podcast with my family home in mum and dad's garage, and my brothers just really encouraged me to do it. My older brother's in sports marketing and my younger brother's a videographer, so I kind of had a natural team around me that just encouraged me to do it. And from there, we've grown it, particularly in the social media space. And all we want to do is highlight the stories of incredible female athletes, females who are in administration, who officiate, who are breaking down barriers in all aspects of the game. Because I think the more that we can highlight that, the more that people can understand that women do deserve to belong in these spaces, and it's not just, sport isn't just a safe space for the men, and that we can actually create a huge amount of change through that.
I personally follow it. I see a lot of the information that comes out on it. So if you don't follow it, please take the time to go and do that. Then we get so far we've got Chloe Dalton, WNBL, OAM, Sevens Rugby, gold medalist Olympics, WAFL, Carlton, GWS, founder of the Athlete Project, Female Athlete Project. Now, what's left? Author. There's a book Chloe's written and recently released. We've got boxes of them up there. Everyone can get one. Chloe's kindly agreed to sign them for you. How long did it take you to do this? I know if I was Jeff tripping over my IT skills, it'd take me about 5 years to write that.
I think because I put it off for quite some time, I had to cram about 50,000 words into 3 months, which was a horrible experience. I kind of, lots of athletes when they write books get like a ghostwriter, like they get a journalist and they sit down and they do these really long interviews so that the journalist can write the book for them and pretend that it's in their voice. So I kind of wish that I did that, but for some ridiculous reason I said I'd write it myself. It was a really challenging task, but I think part of it was also really cathartic in a way, because I reflected on a lot of stories throughout my career as a female athlete around some of the barriers that I had faced, some of the things that had been said to me, whether it was by a male coach or by a doctor, around just me being a female in sport. And what I really wanted to do with the book is give kind of like an inside look for so many people who see the end product of whether it's women's sport on the TV, who don't actually know the backstory of all of the barriers that female athletes and women in sport more broadly have to face to get anywhere in their career. And so I wanted to share some of my own personal stories. I also I asked a couple of other athletes to contribute their own stories to the book. And then I did a huge amount of research because I'm sitting here arguing the case for women's sport about why it's important, why brands should be invested in it, why the crowd numbers, the potential for crowd numbers, why they reflect the demand for women's sport. But I wanted to make sure that it was really evidence-based, so it wasn't just me sitting there saying, this is my opinion and this is why it should happen. There's actually data that supports what I'm saying here. So it was an experience and it was hard work, but seeing the finished product is pretty crazy that, to even hear you say that I'm an author, I don't really feel like one, but apparently I am.
Apparently you are, and you are. Look, I got to say, when this book came out, girls don't play sport, we've done a big red line through it. I went and bought it pretty quickly and I've read it, and it's a great read, and I really recommend it to everybody here. So, just on behalf of everyone, Chloe, thank you very much for coming today to share your vast array of experiences in sport, female sport, and there is no doubt you're highly successful, you're very good at what you do, and can I say congratulations, and if you could all join with me in congratulating Chloe. We've got this fancy thing called slider. Everyone, I hope there's people to ask questions about it. Sarah up the back there's going to relay those questions to you.
So, we've got what moment inspired female athletes project? Is a game TV account podcast trending women in sport? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I think the owl story was probably a big part of it, but I think it was kind of funny, I touched on this idea of wanting to do something, and I think so many female athletes all the time are told that, and they want to build their career or whatever, you've got to be more active on social media, you've got to do all of these things, and I kind of wasn't really that person. I don't love posting a lot about my life on social media, it's just not something that's very natural to me. But when I kind of had this idea of the importance of sharing other athletes' stories, that was something to me that felt like I had the capacity to do that. That felt like something that was really natural for me. And with the podcast space, I think when you watch sport, if you don't really feel that connected to people who you're watching, you don't feel as invested to kind of cheer them on as you would that someone you know their personal story and what they've been through. I think it's really powerful when you hear someone's story and you might then see them out there, you know the injuries that they've had, what their childhood was like, the hardships they've been through, you feel way more connected. And so I think that's why the storytelling element of it is so powerful, because I want people to hear the stories of these athletes who have achieved incredible things and I believe deserve to be household names, but haven't been that because they haven't received the media coverage. And so we wanted to try and kind of fill that gap. And in terms of the growth on social media, we started just posting podcast content, and then we trialled a few things around a weekly wrap of what's happened this week in women's sport. Jess Fox won another championship in paddling, and so-and-so achieved this and broke a record or whatever. And we started to get really good engagement on it. And again, we realised that so many people are consuming news and information now through social media. But a few years ago, this was in 2020 when we started, hardly anyone was covering women's sport consistently so that you could go to one place and find news and information about women's sport. So that's kind of the hole that we wanted to address there.
That's awesome. Another really one that I've seen is Chloe, your sister and Brett. We all before. Thank you for sharing your story. What will basketball learn from the other sports you play?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the recent collective bargaining agreement that the AFL has done has been a really massive step in the right direction. I think what's been quite cool, there's been a couple of sports that have kind of led the way in terms of cricket, and Rugby Australia have kind of been at the forefront in terms of their agreements and minimum salaries and things like that. And AFLW is kind of following along behind, as is NRLW, kind of building momentum in those areas. But I think one of the best areas of progression that I've seen in these new collective bargaining agreements is more the off-field athlete wellbeing component. So a really big one is the pregnancy policy that's now in place for if an athlete is pregnant, gives birth, their contract, their spot in the team is actually protected, and then they've got 12 months after they give birth to be able to recover and then come back and continue playing. Whereas previously, there was actually nothing in place to even protect athletes that might have had a baby. And I think it's just a really big topic, right? Because a lot of the time your most successful years and your most competitive years as an athlete can often be your most fertile years. So it's a really important thing, I think, that sports can get right to make sure that they're looking after their females in that space too.
For our next slide as a lead player, what does it mean to you to have different friends that foster the world with a shared passion?
Yeah, that's been absolutely one of my favourite things about sport. I just love this idea that you can build such great relationships from it, and particularly Rugby Sevens, the fact that we got to travel around the world doing that, and it was always the Irish team that had the best time at the pub, probably because they love drinking beer as much as we do, and they've always got a good sense of humour, the Irish. But I think it's just a really cool thing, and again, one of my favourite things about sport is that you're all striving to achieve that podium finish, the medal, whatever it is, but at the end of the day, like when your career is said and done, you want to be remembered, to me, you want to be remembered as that person that always stay true to your values in the way that you perform, and then true to your values in the way that you interact with other people. And I think, I know there's athletes that I've come across that have that real sense of white line fever, and I totally respect that, but I think, to me, it's always got to be within what your values are that are important, and not crossing that line that at the end of the day, you're still going to feel like you played and competed as your true self.
Right, there's a few more here, but we'll leave on a controversial one.
I'm nervous.
If you were given a chance to choose your sport career, what would you choose between basketball, AFL, and rugby? Which is your favourite? Remember where we're last?
Basketball. You know what? Let's say I would suck at basketball now. I'd be so rusty. I feel like it's one of those sports like you just have to keep your skills up so much. I'd be so rusty. But I'd love to kind of try basketball again. Like I wish I could kind of restart with the mental skills that I have now. You know, like I would love to try basketball again without being this really anxious teenager and see how it went and taking all this pressure off myself. So I think for those of you who might be starting out in your officiating careers in your early days, just be kind to yourself is probably my advice.
Well, we might see you on the court again
See you there.
Thank you very much for your time. And if you'd like to give it a round of applause.